Here are the 2021 projections for the SEC East, and you can see, for the most part, they were pretty accurate, similar to the SEC West. Almost everyone was within a game or two. Florida, the one team that the projection really missed the mark on. Of course, they just kind of fell apart last year. But Georgia was projected to go 11-1, 12-0. And really, Georgia was like projected to go 11.5 and 0.5 because the Clemson game was a 50-50 game in the preseason. So if we had said that they were going to win that game, then the projection would have been 12-0. Florida, again, this was a team that they really underperformed. They were the biggest underperformer in the SEC last season, going just 6-6. Kentucky beat the projection by 2 games. They were projected to go 7-5. They go 9-3. Good year for them. Missouri off the mark by 1. They were just 6-6. Tennessee beat the projection by 2. Projected just to go 5-7. They went 7-5. South Carolina beat it by 1 game, going 6-6 and making it to a bowl game despite a tough schedule. And then Vanderbilt going 2-10, even worse than the 4-8 projection for them. So now let's look ahead to 2022. And again, we're really going to focus on the overall record here, not as much on the conference record because we had to move that conference record around just to get an even number of wins and losses for the conference records. Just focus on that overall record. So at the bottom, we've got Vanderbilt going 2-10. So they did not get the same projection. And I think a big reason why they were projected to go 4-8 last year and 2-10 this year is because the SEC is just better. I mean, South Carolina is just better. Tennessee is better, or at least than they were projected to be last season. And so that really gives Vanderbilt no game where you really say they got a shot. You know, last year you looked at Missouri and South Carolina and Tennessee and you thought, well, maybe Vanderbilt has a little bit of a chance, probably not going to win, but it would have given them enough of a percentage to where if you add all those up, you could get a win potentially. But they have basically no chance in any game they play this year. I think Missouri is the most likely game that they could possibly win, but a 2-10 overall projection for them. Moving on to Missouri, they are projected to go 6-6. That would put them around 3-5 in the conference. I have a hard time seeing this team going 3-5. Maybe we'll see. I think you could probably put them more in like a 2-6 range, and then if they win their non-conference games, they could go 6-6. I believe they play Kansas State. I'm trying to remember the schedules. I think that's their non-conference game. But again, we're really looking at that overall record. 6-6 for Missouri. Enough to get to a bowl game, which would put 13 of the 14 teams, if these projections did come true, 13 of the 14 teams in the SEC would make it to a bowl game, which would really be something. Ahead of them, Florida, projected to go 7-5. Now we've got some ties here. We're looking at the overall record. That's the order that I went in. But if we did have a tie, I went with whoever had home field advantage in the regular season matchup to kind of put one team ahead of the other. But really, it's just a tie. Florida at 4-4. Also, South Carolina at 4-4, 7-5 overall. You know, I think that's pretty accurate. I think the SEC East projections here are going to be pretty accurate, and they may not be perfect, but I definitely think they'll all be within a game or two, just like they were last year, except for Florida. But I don't see a Florida happening this year in the SEC East. Then we've got Kentucky, also 4-4 in the conference, but 8-4 overall, so ahead of South Carolina and Florida because of that overall record. They have played. All these teams are going to play a tough schedule in the SEC, but an easier non-conference schedule maybe for Kentucky. That's going to put them at 8-4, ahead of South Carolina and ahead of Florida. And then you've got Tennessee up here at number 2. Same overall projection as Kentucky at 8-4, but just the way it had to work out, this does have them at 5-3, meaning they would lose to Pitt. But let's say they beat Pitt, that would change that conference record to 4-4, and they'd be right there with Kentucky and South Carolina and Florida. So while you see Tennessee and Kentucky just ahead of South Carolina and Florida, when you look at those projections, I think those 4 teams are pretty even, and I think it's going to be a really interesting race there in the East. But based off of how it worked out, conference record-wise, yes, Tennessee did finish ahead of Kentucky and South Carolina and Florida here, but they were tied with Kentucky with that 8-4 overall record. And then there's Georgia at 11-1 overall, 7-1 in the conference, same as Alabama. Who's going to beat them? That's the question. You know, they've got some tricky games in there. Maybe someone knocks them off. But I think, you know, it's 11-1 or 12-0 for Georgia. Don't see them doing any worse than that. So when you look at this, if everything is within 2 games, like 13 to 14 teams were last year. You could say Tennessee maybe 10-2, Kentucky maybe 10-2 if things really go their way, but also maybe as bad as 6-6 potentially. Could South Carolina or Florida get to 9-3, or could they finish even worse? Maybe a 6-6 or 5-7 record potentially. Missouri, if things go off the rails there, could they be 4-8? So you just kind of look at the best and worst case scenarios there, going up and down a couple of games. But overall, I think this is pretty accurate. I do think Georgia will be right there at the top, and then you'll have kind of a logjam with those next 4 teams. This is not an official prediction. This is simply a projection based off of these percentages that we've been using. My predictions will be coming up here very soon, and they won't look exactly like this. But like I said, I think this gives a pretty good indication of what the SEC East is going to look like in 2022. Would love to get your thoughts on this. How do you think that the projections look here? Do you agree or disagree with this? Give me your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.